Perhaps one of the most famous short stories for kids is Little Red Riding Hood. But did you know that this tale actually has different versions?
That's right, Nick. In one version, the little girl and her grandmother escaped, while another version even tells us that the girl and wolf sleep together like friends. How about you? What version do you know?
What's up, guys? It's Nick here.
And I'm Josh, and we're from Eventful Insights.
Today we'll be delving into the original dark story of Little Red Riding Hood.
So in this video, we'll talk about the most popular version that many people know about and discover the darker versions of the story. Are you ready?
I think they're ready, Josh. But before we begin, why don't we have some little trivia game to test their knowledge of Little Red Riding Hood?
In the popular version of the story, which is the Grimm's version, how does the story end? A. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother are saved by a huntsman. Or B. Both Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother are eaten by the wolf. We'll give you 5 seconds to comment down below before we reveal the answer.
And time is up. Let's see if you remember the tale correctly. The correct answer is A. Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother are saved by a huntsman.
Later, we'll help you remember the Grimm's version of the story if you didn't get the correct answer. For now, let's have a quick background on the writing of Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood has various versions, but the one we're familiar with today was penned by Charles Perrault in France in 1697. And in fact, Perrault compiled different oral tales to create his written version of the story. The story doesn't consistently have the same plot or conclusion. The version we commonly know today is influenced by the Brothers Grimm version. So, what happens in the Grimm version? Once, there was a girl nicknamed Little Red Riding Hood because her grandmother crafted her a red cloak. One day, her grandmother fell ill, prompting Little Red to visit her with a basket of goodies. Despite her mother's warning to stay on the path and avoid talking to strangers, Little Red encounters a wolf in the woods. Disregarding her mother's advice, she reveals her destination to the wolf. The wolf tricks her into taking a longer route and picking flowers. Hurrying ahead, the wolf reaches grandmother's house, swallows her whole, and disguises himself in her clothes. When Little Red arrives, the wolf, now in bed, consumes her too. But a nearby huntsman hears the wolf snoring, intervenes, and cuts open its stomach to rescue both Little Red and her grandmother.
That is the happy ending that we commonly know, Josh. But do you have any idea what happens in the original version written by Charles Perrault? Similar to many contemporary fairy tales, Little Red Riding Hood has been adapted to serve as a suitable bedtime story for children. However, the original narrative is much darker than one might anticipate, especially when considering the original stories in Charles Perrault's Mother Goose Tales. Some argue that Perrault may not have authored the tale, but rather documented an existing oral legend. Alternatively, it is suggested that the story might have originated during the werewolf trials of that time. Over the ages, the story has undergone numerous alterations to suit different cultural contexts. While various cultures have their own versions of Little Red Riding Hood, the more positive renditions typically feature a young, innocent girl who struggles to distinguish between her grandmother and a wolf in a night bonnet. In these versions, the little girl typically manages to escape in the end, but Perrault's version tells a different and much darker tale. In this rendition of the story, the wolf is portrayed as truly horrific. He arrives at the scene ahead of time, viciously kills the grandmother, and prepares her body to await the arrival of the little girl in the red hood. When the young girl arrives, he commands her to undress, throw her clothes, her apron, stockings, petticoat, and all into the fire, and get into bed with him.
Shocking, right? And so the tale unfolds. Little Red Riding Hood undresses and climbs into bed. It is then that she observes the large arms, legs, ears, eyes, and the notably big mouth of the figure she thought was her grandmother. The moment she particularly notices the large teeth, the wolf discloses his true identity and devours her entirely. As stated in the conclusion of Perrault's version, this wicked wolf fell upon Little Red Riding Hood and ate her all up.
Now that's not a happy ending, but didn't you say, Josh, that there was actually a darker version than what we just revealed?
You're right, Nick. So, can you try to guess what happens in this darker version of the story? Is it A, Little Red Riding Hood fights back and kills the wolf, or B, The wolf cuts the grandmother's body into pieces and feeds it to Little Red Riding Hood. You have 5 seconds to put your answers in the comments.
Let's reveal the answer. The correct answer is B. The wolf cuts the grandmother's body into pieces and feeds it to Little Red Riding Hood.
Now that we've revealed the correct answer, I bet you're so intrigued by this version. Let's get to know more about this darker version of the story. In this rendition, after the wolf eats the grandmother, he chops up her body and puts the pieces on a silver plate. He collects her blood in a wine bottle and puts both the wine and the pieces of meat in the cupboard. After a while, Little Red Riding Hood becomes hungry, and the wolf instructs her to eat the meat and drink the wine from the cupboard. Unaware that she is consuming her own grandmother's flesh and blood, the girl doesn't protest. In some versions, she even comments that it's a wonderful feast.
How horrifying is that? Did you see that ending coming? But Josh, did you know that there is actually a version where Little Red Riding Hood learns her lesson? In this version, a few days after Little Red Riding Hood managed to escape the wolf, Little Red Riding Hood was once again sent to her grandmother's house. Another wolf tried to get her attention, but this time, Little Red Riding Hood stayed focused and informed her grandmother about the new wolf. The wolf then appeared at the house, hiding on the roof, planning to attack her when she returned in the evening. However, the grandmother outsmarted the wolf this time by tricking him with sausages. As a result, Little Red Riding Hood came home safely without any harm. Isn't it nice to hear in this version that Little Red Riding Hood knew how to not be deceived by the wolf?
Indeed. Now, why don't we compare and contrast the different commonly known versions of Little Red Riding Hood? A significant contrast between Perrault's and Grimm's versions of the story is evident in their endings. Perrault's version, being the earliest, concludes with a grim outcome. Both the grandmother and the little girl are devoured by the wolf. As mentioned earlier, Perrault ends the tale with the words, "And saying these words, this wicked wolf fell upon Little Red Riding Hood, and ate her all up." In contrast, the Grimm brothers' version offers a more optimistic ending. In their rendition, the girl and the grandmother are rescued from the wolf by a hunter. This conclusion appears more fitting for a story intended for children.
Aside from the Grimm story having a happy ending, unlike Perrault's, the most crucial difference lies in the significance of the pathway through the forest. In Perrault's 17th century version, the mother doesn't mention the importance of staying on the forest path. In the Grimm's tale, however, this is clearly stated. When you are going, walk nicely and quietly, and do not run off the path. The path in both stories represents the journey from the innocence and safety of the childhood home through the unknown, potentially dangerous woods, to the safety represented by the grandmother. In Perrault's tale, Little Red is captivated by the beauty of the woods after encountering the wolf. Her innocence causes a delay in reaching her grandmother, resulting in the tragic demise of both. In the Grimm version, the mother emphasizes the significance of the pathway, and it is the wolf's deliberate manipulation of Little Red that led to the subsequent events.
Additionally, in Perrault's story, we are advised to understand the importance of sticking to a path that guides us through the symbolic chaos of the unknown. It's a lesson about avoiding innocence and naivety that could lead to our downfall. Perrault suggests that the world can be dangerous, and there are no second chances to learn from our own mistakes. So it's crucial to learn from the errors of others. On the other hand, in the Grimm's story, the huntsman comes to the rescue, saving the grandmother and Little Red from the wolf. Some feminist critics see this as a perspective where men are viewed as necessary to save women from danger.
But we'd like to think that in the end, Little Red Riding Hood, who once got distracted by nature's beauty, is now capable of seeking revenge, as seen in her burdening of the wolf. This act symbolizes her shedding of innocence and naivety. She's now more aware of the world, as shown in the next story, where another wolf tries a similar trick but ends up meeting a quicker end due to the cleverness of the grandmother and Little Red. Both tales suggest that being inexperienced and vulnerable can lead to one's downfall at the hands of the wicked or predatory. To thrive, it's not just about gaining experience, but also being able to recognize and use aspects of these traits.
What are your thoughts after learning about the original dark stories of Little Red Riding Hood? Do you think that you will never look at this story the same?
Tell us what lesson from the different versions you were able to pick up, And if you enjoyed watching this video, give it a like, hit subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Thanks for watching.